Have you ever witnessed an extinction event, not in the wild but on the gridiron? A moment when a complex, vibrant ecosystem, brimming with life and power, was systematically dismantled, silenced, and then simply erased by an unstoppable force of nature. The wind howls, the earth trembles, and then a profound, chilling silence falls. This is not a fable, nor a nightmare. This is the true account of Super Bowl XLVIII, where a football game transformed into a primal demonstration of absolute dominion. The gathering storm. The stage was set, a clash of titans painted in stark, terrifying contrast. On one side, the Denver Broncos, a breathtaking, record-shattering offensive machine, led by the legendary Peyton Manning. They were the symphony of points, the architects of aerial artistry, having carved their way through defenses with an unprecedented 606 regular season points and 55 passing touchdowns. Their attack was a bright, burning star, promising an explosive, unforgettable performance. But against this brilliant blaze stood an unyielding, elemental darkness, the Seattle Seahawks. They were not merely a football team. They were a collective entity, a force forged in the relentless rain and rugged mountains of the Pacific Northwest. Their defense, christened the Legion of Boom, was an ominous prophecy, a wall of pure, unadulterated aggression, speed, and suffocating coordination. How could one team stand against such an overwhelming tide of points, a seemingly unstoppable offensive juggernaut? What ancient instinct guided the hunters from the Pacific Northwest, empowering them to confront and conquer the most formidable prey imaginable? Was it strategy alone, or something deeper, more visceral, that drove them? They played not with precision, but with an almost predatory intent, turning every snap into a potential ambush, every down into a declaration of war. Their approach wasn't about stifling. It was about crushing, about turning opposing offenses into petrified, paralyzed husks. The air thrummed with unspoken menace, a low growl audible only to those attuned to the whispers of impending doom. The first tremors. The game began not with a bang, but with a terrifying whisper, a premonition delivered in the chilling silence of immediate disarray. The world watched, breathless, as the opening snap soared over Peyton Manning's head, sailing into the end zone. The roar of the crowd was not one of excitement, but of stunned disbelief as the ball was recovered for safety. The clock, barely registering time, showed a mere 12 seconds elapsed. The opening snap of Super Bowl XLVIII resulted in the fastest score in Super Bowl history, a safety at 12 seconds, setting an immediate, chilling tone for Denver. Could a game, the pinnacle of a season, be broken in its first breath? Was this an accident, or a premonition, a dark omen etched onto the very fabric of the contest? The carefully constructed strategies of weeks, the meticulous preparations, the collective hopes of an entire city, all were undone in a blink. It was not just 2 points, it was a psychological hammer blow, a declaration of intent delivered with brutal efficiency. The Seahawks had not waited to engage. They had attacked before the battle even truly began, injecting a venom of doubt and dread into the veins of their adversary. The opening gambit was a statement. This would not be a fair fight, but a relentless, unforgiving hunt. Every step Denver took thereafter was taken on unsteady ground, under a sky that had already begun to darken. The Predators' stranglehold. From that initial, shocking salvo, the Seahawks systematically tightened their grip. The Broncos, attempting to regain their footing, found themselves ensnared in an inescapable net. Manning, usually a master conductor, was forced into rapid, desperate throws, his rhythm shattered, his options vanishing with alarming speed. The Seahawks' defensive linemen burst through the offensive line like a sudden gale, disrupting routes before they could even form. Their linebackers swarmed, a blur of motion cutting off escape paths, turning every open field into a claustrophobic alleyway. And then there was the secondary, the infamous Legion of Boom, a quartet of apex predators patrolling the deep, their eyes cold and unwavering. Malcolm Smith, a lesser-known but equally dangerous piece of the defensive machine, intercepted a Manning pass, returning it 69 yards for a touchdown. The stadium, initially buzzing with Super Bowl excitement, now echoed with a chilling, almost unnatural silence from the Denver faithful. What despair must settle when every path is blocked, every breath is stolen. How does a team, once so dominant, become so utterly vulnerable, their brilliance dimmed by an oppressive, suffocating darkness? Each incompletion, each sack, each turnover was another turn of the screw, another thread added to the web that bound the Broncos tighter and tighter. They were not merely struggling. They were being systematically disassembled, their powerful engine seizing up under the relentless pressure. The threat wasn't just physical. It was psychological, an insidious erosion of confidence that left their once potent offense paralyzed with doubt. The unseen architect. The Legion of Boom wasn't just a collection of talented individuals. It was a phenomenon, a collective consciousness operating with a terrifying, almost psychic synergy. Richard Sherman, the verbose, analytical corner, read plays like an open book, his long arms snatching passes from the air. Earl Thomas, the free safety, was a lightning bolt covering impossible ground, an unblinking eye in the sky. Cam Chancellor, the strong safety, was a human missile delivering bone-jarring hits that resonated through the stadium. And Byron Maxwell, the overlooked corner, locked down his side with quiet, relentless efficiency. That season, the Seahawks Legion of Boom secondary featured 3 Pro Bowlers and 2 All-Pros, a collective unit so dominant it was less a defense and more a coordinated, inescapable net. What kind of monstrous collective mind could engineer such a perfect, impenetrable wall where every gap was covered, every weakness exploited? Was this merely superior coaching, or a deeper, shared predatory instinct, honed through years of playing together, anticipating each other's moves, moving as one organism? Their defensive philosophy wasn't complex. It was brutal in its simplicity. Hit hard, hit fast, and never, ever yield. They reveled in the physicality, the collision, the sheer force of what required to bend an opponent to their will. They were the embodiment of their wild, untamed region, channeling the rugged independence and fierce determination of the Pacific Northwest into every tackle, every deflection, every snap. Their unity was their greatest weapon, turning individual talent into an overwhelming, unified force of destruction. The avalanche continues. The halftime break offered no respite, no chance for the Broncos to regroup or adjust. Instead, it merely served as a brief interlude before the second act of Annihilation. The second half began with a gut punch that removed any lingering illusion of a contest. Percy Harvin, a dynamic, explosive weapon, fielded the opening kickoff of the third quarter and exploded into a blur of motion, weaving through a stunned Denver coverage unit. His 87-yard touchdown return was not just another score. It was the definitive statement, a final, brutal declaration that all hope was gone. What happens when hope itself is not just lost, but brutally extinguished in such a spectacular, undeniable fashion? Can a team break a spirit that has already been crushed underfoot, leaving only a hollow shell behind? The Broncos continued to falter, their attempts at offense becoming increasingly desperate, almost frantic. Manning, renowned for his composure and surgical precision, was visibly rattled. His throws lacked their usual zip, his decisions marred by the constant, suffocating pressure. Peyton Manning, who shattered passing records all season, faced 11 quarterback hits and was sacked twice in the Super Bowl, a relentless assault that visibly dismantled his legendary composure. The weight of the moment, coupled with the ceaseless battering, wore down even the greatest of his generation. Another interception followed, returned by Malcolm Smith, further deepening the chasm between the two teams. It wasn't just a lead. It was an insurmountable barrier, a mountain of defensive dominance that towered over the Broncos, casting an inescapable shadow. Every minute that ticked by was a further descent into helplessness for Denver, a testament to Seattle's unyielding grip. The apex predator's silence. The final score, 43-8, barely scratches the surface of the dominance. This wasn't a game decided by a few critical plays. It was a total systemic shutdown. The Broncos' vaunted offense, the most prolific in NFL history, was held to a mere 8 points, its lowest output of the entire season. They amassed only 306 total yards, a fraction of their usual production, against a defense that dictated every single moment of the contest. Their offensive engine, finely tuned and meticulously crafted, was utterly and completely deconstructed. How do you dissect a victory so absolute it borders on the surreal, a performance where one side commanded the very air the other team breathed? What lessons can be drawn from a display of power so overwhelming it silences all debate, leaving only stunned admiration in its wake? Was this simply a game, or a primal demonstration of hierarchy, a brutal lesson in who truly ruled the gridiron jungle? The Seahawks had not just won. They had delivered a masterclass in aggressive, perfectly coordinated defense, a symphony of destruction orchestrated with terrifying precision. They turned the biggest stage in sports into their hunting ground, and their prey, no matter how formidable on paper, stood no chance. The silence from the Denver side of the stadium was deafening, a testament to the comprehensive nature of their defeat. The final answer. The Super Bowl was not merely won. It was irrevocably claimed from its opening snap, a 12-second safety that foreshadowed an unprecedented 43-8 defensive dismantling of the NFL's top offense. It was a spectacle that transcended sport, becoming a profound, undeniable declaration of power. This was not a victory achieved through mere talent or strategic advantage, but through an almost elemental force, a primal surge of aggression, speed, and absolute coordination that swept away all resistance. The Seattle Seahawks, on that frigid night, embodied the raw, impartial power of nature itself. They were the storm, the avalanche, the apex predator perfectly evolved for its environment, moving with such seamless, devastating efficiency that it could only be viewed with a deep, unsettling admiration. It was the awe-inspiring, terrifying beauty of a force unleashed, a reminder that even the most formidable creations of man can be rendered insignificant when confronted by something truly fundamental, truly untamed. Their dominance was not just a performance. It was a phenomenon, a chilling, beautiful display of nature's relentless might. And as the final whistle blew, it wasn't a sound of triumph, but a sigh of relief. A relief that such a relentless, overwhelming force had finally, mercifully, ceased its crushing pressure. The Broncos were not simply defeated. They were rendered irrelevant, their historical offense reduced to a whisper by a roar that reverberated through the very foundations of the game. It was the moment the world collectively understood. This wasn't just a win. It was an act of total, uncompromising dominion, a force of nature unfurled on the biggest stage. Have you ever witnessed an extinction event? Not in the wild, but on the gridiron? Now you have.